Good morning. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you on our Tuesday morning coffee chat. I don't even have my coffee with me today. I just have some water. I got up early, but it's good to be here and talking to you about some crowdfunding stuff. Today, I thought we would do a little bit of overview of a few different crowdfunding platforms because that is a question I get a lot of. Which crowdfunding platform should I use? And which one works best for the particular project that I'm going to um, be diving into right now. As always, please say hi in the chat if you have any questions. There will be lots of time for those, so go ahead and drop them in, and I will address them. If you have anything you want me to look over for whatever project you have coming up, you can always send those to me. You can drop me an email. I am extremely happy to answer those during this time. So if you have sent me an email, just let me know in the chat and I will go ahead and pop that open while we're here at the office hour. Or, yeah, go ahead and send me one now and just let me know that it's happening. If I seem to have forgotten, I probably did. So just go ahead and let me know. But yeah, anyway, Meet the Platforms is what today is. And there are a lot of different crowdfunding platforms that I know a lot about because this is what I do, but you may not know all about them. Let's just make sure my audio is on and my video is on. It is. Great. So, meet the platforms. Let's meet them. And some of this is going to be a little bit of review, but I will be heavily editorializing. And obviously, just be aware that this is my opinion. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Let everybody know we're here. All right. First of all, let's start at the beginning of my journey. The very first crowdfunding project that my band ever did was a DIY project, a do-it-yourself project that was not on a platform. It wasn't on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Seed and Spark or anything. It was just a project that we set up on our own website where we had people could just pre-order basically our music and pay a little bit of extra because that little bit of extra was going towards us actually paying to produce the record, us, printing stuff, us going on tour, that kind of stuff. So basically, people could order the CD for, I think, probably like 25 bucks, or they could also get a cool package with some extra merch, some dice, some CDs for 50, $75. We gave them, like, their name was in a hall of fame for being such a good supporter. And for that, they paid more than obviously any of that was worth in terms of like actual value of a t-shirt. But yeah, I call that the DIY approach. And I think this is a really good approach for a small project with a very small goal. I think we probably raised maybe somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 with that. And it's really good for a small project with a small goal, or maybe you've already kind of funded this project out of pocket and you're just hoping to make some of that money back so that you can go on to the next project. It's really good if you already know your audience, you're already in communication with your audience, and you don't need the new people quite yet. Maybe you kind of already you have a mailing list and you know that you could make the thing happen that you need to make happen with the number of people you have, and you don't need to like really go public with your project at this moment. I really encourage you to do this for your first project, for your first like thing you're doing, because it's a good idea to start small, right? Maybe your first outgo into the world isn't a huge ambitious, a giant film. It's just a weekend where you go and rent a house and make a little horror short film, and you just need $600 to rent that house and rent a camera, that kind of thing. It's a good idea to make your proof of concept. And what you're doing there is you're building your reputation both as a creator and as somebody who can use crowdfunding money responsibly and actually fulfill rewards. You're building your community. You're building the reputation with your community, because every time you tell people you're going to do something and you actually do it, you're building trust. And you're trying something out. You're making sure that you want to do the thing that you're telling people you want to do. Because every time you sign up yourself up for a project, you're kind of taking a leap of faith in so many different ways. And if that leap of faith happens to be like a $3 million project, and you realize, oh gosh, I actually don't want to do this, well, it's a little bit too late at that point. So I think a DIY project is a really good place to start. If you're starting out on your creative journey, think about that instead of going really ambitious really quickly. So, in terms of the technology for a DIY project, you might do this by building your own store, like through PayPal, through Bandcamp. If you're a musician, there's a really easy to use store on Bandcamp. Bandzoogle is another great place where you can build a website, and they have store options there. You could build something on, like, Wix is another website building platform, or Square. Um, all great places where you can just set up a store. Um, Square, yeah, that's what I meant. Square, also Squarespace, a little more expensive, but all of these places you can just build a really quick website, set up various levels, and a couple packages, probably keep it pretty simple, maybe just three, the cheap, the medium, and the like fancy. And then just make sure you're delivering on time, making it as simple as possible. That is my recommendation for DIY project. All right, the next recommendation, I'm going to jump straight to Kickstarter. And if you know me, that you know that Kickstarter is my favorite. And I decided just to go straight here. So Kickstarter is great for anything from $500 to $1 million or more than $1 million. It's a platform that it wasn't like the first ever crowdfunding platform, but it really is the one that people think of a lot of the time when they're thinking of a crowdfunding platform. Here are some things you need to know when you're launching a Kickstarter. Even though it does seem to be the place where money comes from to launch projects, you need to know where at least 50% of your audience, where of your money is coming from before you launch. You may gain momentum and find a new audience as well. And another good thing about Kickstarter is that people already have accounts on there. They can link their Facebook with Kickstarter, so it's really easy for people to just like one click back your project, as opposed to having to go in and make an account and add their credit card, which is one reason that I don't back a lot of projects on other platforms. It's just like a lot of work. But you already do need to know where your audience is coming from on Kickstarter. It's not magic. But on the other hand, the reputation on Kickstarter for new backers is the highest of all the platforms, I would say. It's a place where there is a bit of a review process. It's not a huge review process, but they do have rules, and that means that people kind of trust you when you've launched a Kickstarter project, that you've thought about what you've done. That being said, it's still on you to demonstrate that you are a professional, because many Kickstarter creators have disappeared in the past. Kickstarter is an all or nothing platform, which means that you have to raise the full goal. So if you say, I need $5,000 to print this book, you need to raise $5,000. Otherwise, you don't get any of the money. They take, the total fees between Kickstarter and the credit card fees are about 8%. That's going to be the case for most platforms. And stretch goals are super common in Kickstarter, but they are not part of the system. And that's also true of a lot of these platforms. Like, if you meet your $5,000 goal and you want to add, like, at $8,000, it's going to be a hardcover book. That's pretty common, but that's not actually built into Kickstarter. A lot of people think that, okay, I have to do stretch goals when I'm on Kickstarter. It's not actually true. Another thing to know about the Kickstarter technology, this is the one downside that a lot of people see. Backers have to use a credit or a debit card to back on Kickstarter. So that is inconvenient for some international backers or some backers who don't have a credit or a debit card, who want to use PayPal. You might see some of these complaints. People are like, but what about PayPal? PayPal just isn't as reliable. It's a lot easier for people to cancel a PayPal transaction after it's happened and stuff like that. And they obviously get to take some fees as well. So I think that's probably why Kickstarter doesn't use PayPal. Other people do, because it means they get more money because more people can use it. So yeah, that's the main downside of Kickstarter. So if you have an audience that is primarily a PayPal audience for whatever reason, you may not want to use Kickstarter. But other than that, I think it's really good for a lot of kinds of projects. Yeah, I like Kickstarter. I like the community there. I find that our audience has a really big Venn diagram overlap with Kickstarter. But that being said, if I'm doing a project where I have like a very specific amount of money that I want to raise and I don't need it to build a lot of momentum, I still do a DIY crowdfunding project for specific things. Like a couple years ago, I knew I needed to raise $10,000 and only $10,000 for a music video, and I didn't want to spend a whole month raising that money, and I needed to just kind of raise it fast and move on. And for that one, I didn't end up doing a Kickstarter. I just kind of reached out to a specific group of past fans, asking them if they were interested in backing that. I did a DIY project and set up a website on Square, basically set up a store on Square and said, if you're interested, here are 3 different rewards, and you can back this project if you want or not. Either way, I appreciate it, and we did get the $10,000 that way. So it's you don't have to use a platform if you want to crowdfund, but if you want to, if the idea is you want to make as much money as possible, making a public goal, having that nice like thermometer where people can see the numbers go up is really nice. And that's one of the reasons that Kickstarter is so nice, is people can see the money go up. They can see where the money is going. All right. Indiegogo, super similar to Kickstarter in a lot of ways. I would say the audience is more in use for technology. It's more in use for nonprofit projects because nonprofits can't use Kickstarter. It's less in use for art and games than Kickstarter is. That's just, the audience is just a slightly different zone. There's a slightly lower reputation on Indiegogo in terms of just like reliability, because the rules are more lax, although that's not 100% true in all categories. That's just the vibe I get from like my specific community. But that's not always true. The Indiegogo platform has been around super long time. A lot of people have used it to great success. The slice of the pie is just a little bit different. Technology wise, you can do an all or nothing project in Indiegogo where you have to reach your goal, or you can do a flexible goal where no matter how much money you raise versus your goal, you get the money. This says I have opinions about this, which I do. I think if you do a flexible goal, I mean, I feel like every flexible goal project I've seen doesn't hit its goals. And I feel just so weird about that. Like if you have a goal, why wouldn't you want to hit it? And it just doesn't feel like you're taking a leap of faith with your audience. It feels like you're just trying to get money. You're not trying to make a project. You're just trying to get money. It doesn't feel like the right vibe. It doesn't excite people the same way. It doesn't really get people moving the same way that an all or nothing goal does, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that if that's the way you want to go. I just don't think you're going to make as much money as if you really, really, want to motivate your audience with an all or nothing goal. PayPal advantage. Obviously, people can use PayPal on Indiegogo, which is amazing. It's better for some international backers if you have an audience that is this PayPal audience, like the Twitch audience obviously is a huge PayPal audience. That is awesome. And then the fee, again, 8%, it's just like 5% plus the 3% credit card plus 30 cents per transaction. That's going to be the same for most of these platforms. So Indiegogo. Seed and Spark. So there are a lot of subject matter specific crowdfunding platforms. There's one for games, there's one for adult film, there's one for music. There's a lot of them. I think Seed and Spark is the one that I'm going to talk about just because it's the one that has been around the longest and has really kind of established itself the most and really like worked on its community. Um, but there are a few that I encourage you to look into for whatever you're doing because they might have a really nice community and some resources that you can tap into. But Seed and Spark, it started as a film-specific crowdfunding platform. They're expanding a little bit and they want to go into music and games and stuff like that. Um, and in addition to being film specific, they are also very focused on mission based projects and diverse teams and encouraging diversity and like making art that creates change, which is really awesome. Like crowdfunding is creates an amazing opportunity for all of us to encourage positive change in the world and to create art that otherwise wouldn't exist. So really kind of badass of a thing, and Seed and Spark is really understands that. Now, while Seed and Spark doesn't have a built-in backer community, you can't just like launch a project and expect your project to make $10,000. It does have a built-in community of support on the back end. So there's campaign managers there, like their staff and their resources really know what they're doing. They can help you launch a project that is great. They can help you make a plan, and they can also help you access resources about festival submissions for your videos and all kinds of hosting and all kinds of the various things that you need when you're making an independent film. So I definitely recommend checking them out if you're planning to go to make a film. They have, as opposed to things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they have a really specific focus on digital rewards and high level rewards. So basically, making a crowdfunding project where most of your work is going into creating your art, and then way less of your work is going into fulfilling reward. So this is way less of a pre-order based platform or a merch based platform, and more of a platform where you are sending out maybe some digital copies of your film or some like gifts and stuff like that. And then maybe teaching a class or doing something for high level backers at like the $500 level. But you're doing less like, I'm going to send everybody a t-shirt. I'm going to send everybody a pin, that kind of stuff. It's a lot less of that, which I think is really great. And sort of technology, again, there's an 8% fee. The cool thing about Seed and Spark is that they allow backers to cover the fee, which I think is brilliant. I don't know why more platforms don't do that. I think probably everybody would. It's really nice. And then it's not an all or nothing or a fixed goal platform or a flexible goal platform. You have to raise 80% of your goal to get your funds, which is cool. They call it the green light. So you have to get most of your way there. And then they won't let you launch. This is a thing that some platforms do. They have a very rigorous review process where not just anybody can launch on their platform. They review your project not just on your page but also your marketing plan and your audience. So they won't let you launch unless you prove you have already built an audience and that you have an email list and a marketing plan. I've talked to the folks over there one-on-one, and they're brilliant, and this is just such a smart thing to do that they will help you and say like, okay, well, we think this is a good project, but you've got to have a bigger mailing list because when you launch this, it's not going to work. We know how this kind of thing goes, and they're right. So, I mean, first of all, learn from that. Learn that you need a mailing list. Learn that you need an audience before you launch your project. But if you're making a film, I think Seed and Spark is absolutely a really really smart place to go, or a web series or anything in that genre. Okay, Patreon. Now, this is something that people come to me all the time about. Everybody wants Patreon these days, and that's awesome. I've been on Patreon for a long time. I have 3 different Patreons for 3 different projects. Only one of them is super active, and I've made a lot of money on it. To be honest, I think it's good for us to be honest about Patreon. So, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding it, but Patreon is great for a lot of stuff, but it's also people just don't quite, I think, understand it. So let's talk about it a little bit. So Patreon is great for creators. It's you can either have a Patreon where you get paid monthly, or people can pledge to you monthly. Like every month, I want to give my favorite podcaster $2, or they can pledge per item. Like every time my favorite podcaster puts out a podcast, I want to give them $1. Um, then the Patreon community in general is ever growing, and it's an ever changing platform, which is good and bad. Every once in a while they'll do something really wild, and people will say, okay, well, I'm leaving Patreon because they just did something really wild, and it's not what I like about Patreon. And sometimes they do something good. So that's a kind of a danger, a risk reward with a I guess the venture capital run business. But in general, here would be my advice. Patreon is best if you already have a community before launching. It's not really a place to get startup capital for your business. Patreon is a place where, I mean, it was started for by Jack Conte, who's a YouTube musician, and YouTube musicians were people who were creating content for audiences for free, right? YouTube musicians were working extremely hard to make videos, and the audience would watch them for free, and the creators wouldn't really get paid, but people were enjoying the art. And so Patreon kind of acted as like a tip jar for people who were enjoying free content and not paying for it, but but wanted to encourage this expensive art to continue getting made. So if you are making something and people are already enjoying it for free, Patreon is a really, really good place to get people to pay you for it. That's not the only thing it's good for, but that is like at its base, like a really good thing Patreon is good for. So like people who are making YouTube videos do really well on Patreon. People who make podcasts, which is another free resource, it's really good for. People who make web comics, which is another thing people generally enjoy for free. Patreon is really good for. And that's not just like I want to start a webcomic. That's I've already been making a webcomic for a few months, a year, several years. Patreon, that I mean, if you look at the top Patreons, that's really what it's good for. It's also really good for people who have like just post art on their internet, and want to start collecting money. Patreon does work for, although it's a little bit more complicated for like I want to spend the whole year making this film. If you're basically trying to fund one piece of art, I would really encourage you to do a one-time project instead of a Patreon to fund your life while you make that project. I know people have come to me trying to do that, and I really encourage you to do like a Kickstarter or a Seeds and Spark or Indiegogo or a DIY campaign instead of Patreon. In my own experience, launching both Patreon and Kickstarter campaigns, more people are comfortable giving you a one-time donation that is higher than an ongoing low-level donation. I think it's just easier for people to budget that way. People trust it a little bit more. More people are on like a Kickstarter platform than they are on a Patreon platform. So you're just going to get more investment, more people involved if you're doing it once as opposed to doing it constantly. I mean, Patreon is nice to have like a constant source of income, but it's, would you rather make one lump sum of $80,000 or over the whole year maybe make $20,000? Like that, those are different amounts of money. So that's my basic pitch on like if you're trying to do one project. Let's see, did I do something else? Okay. Patreon. The fees vary. There are a few different levels on Patreon depending on how much money you make, when you got in on the platform, how many different kinds of features you want. It also depends on, because people can pledge at pretty low levels, it depends on how many people they're backing, that kind of thing. So you kind of have to go through and read the whole situation and figure out what the fees are going to be. Goals and pledge levels are optional and up to you on how you want to set up. So you can have a goal of like, I want 500 backers. You can have a goal of, I want $100 a month. You can have pledge levels from $1 per item to, $100 a month, whatever you want to do. It's optional. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. A few pieces of advice from me: cut out your $1 a thing level, because at that point you're not making a ton of money. A lot of us got rid of our $1 a thing level and just started at $2, because while you might eliminate a few people who only want to give you $1 a thing, you're going to end up making a lot more money, because the people who would give you $1 will move up to $2, and that is just a lot more money in the long run. And pledge levels: don't give physical items until you get pretty high, because physical stuff is a lot of work to fulfill. And for the most part, when people back a Patreon, they're trying to support you, not trying to get stuff. So don't worry too much about rewards on Patreon. Worry more about creating the art that made people want to support you in the first place. Don't get overwhelmed with fulfilling rewards. I get behind on fulfilling Patreon rewards all the time, and I always regret overpromising. It's just a lot to keep track of. You're already doing a lot. And goals are nice. Setting up something that you think you can reach is really good, and I'll get to more of that in a second. Right now, in fact, doing a month-long campaign to raise funds is very smart, because you don't want to constantly be fundraising. If you were familiar with a month-long public media campaign, like a NPR fundraising drive, you know that they do, pledge rewards and stuff, and they work you constantly, but it's not forever. And I think that that's probably the best way to do a Patreon as well, is to spend 2-3 weeks a month just really working on getting new backers for your Patreon, telling people this is the month I'm working on getting new backers for my Patreon, telling stories like you would during a Kickstarter campaign, you know, making all your posts on Patreon public that month, and showing folks what they can get if they're a Patreon backer, or demonstrating what their Patreon dollars fund, and then stopping at the end, setting a goal for that month, like I want to get 30 more backers this month, that kind of thing. Because if you are constantly plugging your Patreon, you're going to get tired. Your audience is going to get tired, and also there will be no urgency to backing, and people are so deadline oriented. So just give people a deadline, and you will be surprised at how well that works. And also maybe offer some specials, right? So we did this, I think, last year or 2 years ago, where we said anybody who ups their donation to $5 will get a special pin. And we ended up getting, I think, 100 more backers, and a lot more per month, by increasing our Patreon. We restructured it and gave people a special pin. So, and just keep in mind that you don't have to use Patreon if you want to do a subscription service. If you want to get constant month-to-month income, you could do it on Patreon, but you can also just do a PayPal ongoing donation. You can do a Bandcamp subscription. There are a lot of other ways to do it. If you have an audience that trusts you, you may want to look into some other DIY way to have people pledge to you, that isn't on Patreon, where you don't have to pay the fee. And that works a little bit better for you. But that's just a thought. So I'm going to go ahead and go to questions now. I'm not sure if there's any of them, but that was my my chat about the various platform platforms for crowdfunding. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I get a little hopped up on coffee. Um, Crowdfunding is great. Crowdfunding is grand. I love it very much, and I recommend it to you. And yeah, I, you know, think about where you want to go when you're launching your project, and don't assume that you need a platform the first time you go. Don't just do things the way that you want to, that you think you have to, because uh, you've seen other people do it. Crowdfunding is really all about being able to do things your own way. So that's kind of the great thing about it, is that you can customize it to whatever works for you. So I recommend making it work for you, which is awesome. Before we go, if there are no questions, which is totally fine, I'll just go over this project lifeline, which is lifetime. It's not a lifeline. I'll answer this question first. Do you think it is okay that I add the emails of the people who I had contact that work in festivals? So don't add people to your email list without asking, but I think it is okay for you to email them once and say, hey, I'm starting up an email list about my ongoing projects. If you want to join, click this link. That would be the way I would do it. So just email them once and have them opt into the email list, as opposed to adding them automatically. Yeah. I think there is a law. I don't know the law. I know that people who do know the law. It varies from country to country. But yeah, I think it's totally fine to say, hey, we have some cool stuff coming up. I am a cool person. You have met me, and I am cool. And just tell them we have some news and we'd love to tell you about it. And give them a chance to opt in. Opting in is the important thing for so many things in life. Good question, though. Very good question. And yeah, I think there's no harm in asking one time. So, cool. Project lifetime. Let's talk about this. So, I like to have this project lifetime just in this order because I think some people tend to skip steps. And I'd like to remind everybody that there is a specific order that is really helpful when you're crowdfunding. So first of all, you need to know who you are as an artist. And then you need to decide what your goals are. In general, but also for this year. So figure out your mission statement for this year, right? And for you as a human, which can change over your life. Decide on your next project and goals and create a mission statement. So let's figure out what this project is going to be, the smallest project possible, and then create a mission statement. Next step, become discovery ready. So I don't want you to ever start launching a project without having a really good website, social media that is professional and hooked together and ready to launch, that people can go to and say, okay, who is this person that just launched a project? Okay, now I know. Number 4, you're going to grow your audience through content, collaboration, and community. If you need to grow your audience, if you don't already have the audience of the size that you need, you should grow it, and you should do it through content, through creating stuff, creating art, creating things that you believe in, through collaborating with people who you also believe in, who share unique aspects with you, whose audiences are similar to the things you care about, and through communities that also share unique aspects with you and your email list. I see your question, Harry, and it's a great one, and I'm going to get to it in a second. Okay, after you've done all of that stuff, community building and knowing who you are, then you're going to plan the logistics of your crowdfunding campaign, and you're going to plan them down to absolute perfection. And then you're going to plan the promotion of your crowdfunding campaign. You're making a schedule maybe for your promotion. You're getting some assets together. You're making a video. And after you've done all that, that's when you launch and promote all the way and then release your big project. So make sure you don't skip any of these steps before you launch your project. And now I'm going to Harry's excellent question. Harry asks, what's your opinion on updating Packers of an old Kickstarter about new but not really related project that you were also involved in? You should always do this. This is a very, 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 very good idea. You former backers of Kickstarter projects are excellent people to tell about a future Kickstarter project. This is the conversion rate is so high, even if it's not related. People who have backed previous Kickstarters are very likely to back future Kickstarters. There's a reason people do this, and you should absolutely do it, especially if you fulfilled that Kickstarter. I mean, if you didn't, it's just going to annoy them. But if you finish that Kickstarter, or that Indiegogo or whatever that project was, if you fulfilled it, you should absolutely, absolutely be like, oh my gosh, hi everybody, you're amazing. And by the way, I have a new thing that you might be interested in. It's a little bit different, but I think you'll like it. That's a very, very good idea. Very good idea. Drop them an update. Do it. Really good question. Really very good question. Conversion rate is so high. I have numbers on it. It's amazing. Awesome. Okay, well, if those are all the questions, I am going to stop our stream for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and to everybody watching afterwards as well. There are loud noises happening outside my window, which are very unpleasant, so I don't think I need to keep streaming. But I'll show you my face. Hi! Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an excellent, excellent, excellent rest of your week.